Okay, so I am with Lionhearted here. So maybe you could introduce yourself.
All right, well, I'm Devin. I sing and play guitar in Lionhearted.
My name's Kristen. I play bass and do all the backing vocals.
Awesome. So I guess just to get right to it, like, what is the history of the band? Like, about when did you guys get together?
So I actually started this out as a solo project when I was living in Vancouver. That would have been like 2019, 2020, something like that.
Hmm.
And it started out as just like acoustic guitar, singing songs. I'd kind of gone through a bit of a mental health scare and wanted to write music about that. I
Right.
moved back home to Edmonton and we had sort of a soft start with the band where we had like a drummer and a piano player and acoustic guitar. And that didn't really work out the way we wanted it to. And then I would say it's been
Hmm.
about a year. About a year, as we've got the full lineup now. So the getting the electric guitars in and bass and drumming.
So you started out more acoustic. Uh, what made you change from acoustic to more electric? Was it like your tastes were shifting, or was that what you wanted to do all the time?
I think the honest truth is that like it was hard to tell the stories I wanted to tell and like be in the communities that I wanted to be in as just a solo artist.
Hmm.
I'd be booking shows with bands and there'd be the everyone's loading in their drums and their guitar amps and then I would open up the show with just an acoustic guitar.
Hmm.
It just didn't have the scope or like the sound dynamic that I wanted. So
Right.
the goal was kind of to transition it into a full band if I found the right people, but it was really important to me that it was the quality of the people first and then
Hmm.
like musicianship second. I wanted good people that I could count on and work with.
Right. Well, I think if you're particularly focused on like a mental health angle, I think maybe surrounding yourself with the right people is probably the right choice in a band like that. Do you feel like everybody has that vision of wanting to promote, better mental health and things like that? Like they're all kind of agreed on that?
Yeah, I would say that we've all had our own sort of struggles and stuff, right? Like where each member has gone through their own individual experiences that have kind of led them to be a part of the project.
Hmm.
And I'd like to think, yeah, that we've gotten to a place now where we've got four people who are pretty unified in our vision for trying to open up that conversation.
Hmm. So, are you like the primary songwriter then, or is it like a collaborative thing?
I do all of the lyrics, well, most of the lyrics, and the instrumentation comes. Like, everybody kind of writes their own part. So like I'll come with rhythm chords. Kristen will write a groovy bass line. Dale will come in with the leads, and then Adam sort of will drum based on what we're doing with all of that.
Hmm. But when you're writing the lyrics, is it always like mental health? Is that, do you consciously try and think of a mental health angle, or is it just like that's just what comes out when you're writing the lyrics?
I think the main thing is it's kind of from like a storytelling angle. Like the every song sort of evolves from a need to tell a story. And
Hmm.
I would argue that the majority of the stories that I have to tell kind of roll back to that mental health angle, right?
Hmm.
It's the idea of mental health being a thing that has been kind of taboo to talk about, and especially in like, music and um it's supposed to be more upbeat. It's supposed to be more, these are our successes. And I wanted more opportunities to talk about when things weren't as good.
Right. Well, I think that music can be anything. Like it can be happy, and a lot of people love happy music, and that's all they'll listen to. I don't want to say Taylor Swift because she doesn't write, only happy stuff. But like what's on the top 40 most of the time tends to be happy stuff. But music can also be sad stuff. Music can be heavy stuff. So I think that if you are say coming from a mental health angle, I think a lot of people resonate with that and like someone who's struggling would hear that and be able to think like, oh, I'm not alone. Like the one song you had, No Missed Calls.
Yeah.
I was listening to that and it's I was wondering like did that come from a personal experience? Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually got a phone call from a friend that it was kind of the moment. It was, 1, 2 in the morning, and he called and he was saying that he'd had enough and he couldn't keep it up. And it was a very emotional 45-minute phone call. That was it was tense. It was hard to navigate.
Hmm.
And I was able to talk him down. But I remember immediately after hanging up that phone call, I was like, I gotta write about this. Like this is not a thing you should have to go through every day, but I think enough people go through it that it was worth just making a note of.
Yeah. Well, it's a difficult thing. It's a very heavy thing when somebody's, at the end of their rope and they don't feel like they have any options. But unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't have the immediate want to connect with somebody else. Like their immediate thought is like, oh, I don't want to bother anybody, I
Yep.
don't want to like put my issues on anybody else. But like that phone call with someone when someone's going through like a tough thing, I think that that's like can be a very strong thing.
Well, and it's interesting because like the other song on the EP, Lost, was about I got a phone call from somebody else when I was going through the breakdown. And being able to talk about it, being able to be open about it was what got me through. And then No Missed Calls is kind of an inverse perspective of the same situation, right?
Mm,
I was the person supporting somebody else. But the whole point of all of it is to normalize the conversation. It's to like, please make the phone call.
That's
hmm
the highest point of all of it is reaching out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, but it's that kind of courageous step to actually, send the text message or whatever, send a phone call to somebody else and say like, I'm struggling, can you help me? Like, and then I think you also kind of find out who your true friends are if there's somebody that you would even feel comfortable, sending that text to. Because like I know, like I'm not struggling now, but I've been through situations. I have called the suicide hotline at one point in my
Yeah.
life. Like, I was at a really low point, and I think, there are certain friends that they're great people. They're good people, and we have a good time. But like, would I
Yeah.
contact them? I don't know if I would really, it's a true person for that. So,
I find yeah, the hardest thing is to reach out and admit when you aren't doing okay. So we just wanted to open like our hearts to people through music to tell them that it's okay to not be okay,
Yeah.
but you have to be able to reach out and take that first step to be okay. And we just
hmm
want to create that safe space to show that you can do that with the right
yeah,
people.
Well, and even the band's name, right? I mean, the concept of it was the bravery that it takes to be vulnerable,
hmm
right? Being Lionhearted is to be brave and to be, able to speak your mind. And there's the quote about how, you can't be brave without being scared, right? You
mm
have to be scared to take that first step, but taking that first step is important.
yeah. There was a quote that you posted, I think 2020 on Instagram. It was living is the most punk thing you can do.
Yeah.
I th
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty good quote. And it's funny, like redefining punk in that way. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes like when somebody's at the end of their rope, like that really is the most rebellious thing you can do is like just like be like, I'm gonna keep living, I'm gonna keep pushing forward. You can't stop me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny. See, the Instagram for 2020, I had that moment of panic where I'm like, oh God, what was I saying? What kind of
Right?
craziness was I on? Was I
Yeah.
doing some ghoul stuff? But yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, it's there was a good chunk of time, especially like in the infancy of this project, where like I was really not doing well. And creating Lionhearted and like creating these songs, I remember having a moment where, I'd played in music projects in the past where I'd said, I have to show people that I'm talented. I have to show people that I'm competent and that I can do this with them. And when I started Lionhearted, my sole thought was if I can have a show and at the end of the show, one person can say, "Hey man, I needed to hear that," then I did my job.
Right.
And it actually completely shifted the way I looked at playing music live. Like I haven't been disappointed in a show since.
hmm Do you feel like when you're playing live, you can kind of see the audience and you see how they're responding to it, and you get that like, physical kind of like sense of like, people are jiving with what you're doing?
Well, 100%. You read the emotion because that's the thing too about it being story music, right? Is like when I'm up there, it's not just the same verse, chorus, verse, chorus. I'm trying to tell the story and make the eye contact and connect with people that recognize it. I mean, truth be told, is really how we met. Was over it was No Missed Calls, wasn't it? Yeah, I was playing No Missed Calls at a venue for the first time, and Kristen was actually just in the audience.
Hmm. Okay.
And it hit.
Hmm.
I had to leave mid-song to go have a cry, and sometimes even singing it live, I still have a hard time doing it. So
Wow. So really, so after the show, you just went up and talked to him, I guess.
We started talking. We started talking over a pretty long period. We've got a nice little relationship story that blossomed out of that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was those moments, those little moments of like trying to make that connection with people. And I have had a couple of people after a show, come up and say, "Hey man, like that was really poignant and I needed to hear that." And I've had people tell me that some of the stuff we've done live and talked about has had them reach out to their friends,
hmm
right? And be the ones to put the olive branch out to try to connect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean a lot of people, like you said, it's the courage kind of aspect because, I think people feel there's like an awkwardness around it as well. It's not like necessarily that it's like too heavy or emotional because people will, do things that are pretty emotional. But it's like the awkwardness of like, I don't know if I should reach out to this person. Like, maybe they don't, maybe it would almost be like insulting if I was like, are you doing all right? Um, but I think you got to kind of do it if you feel like that's the right thing to do. If it's like your intuition that somebody is struggling, like, you never know when you're going to be helping somebody.
Mhm.
It's nice to be able to inspire people to be the torch in the dark for their circle and their family and friends who are struggling, but also for themselves. I remember one conversation I had with someone who was going through a really, really hard time. It was the same old, hey, how are you? Oh, good, how are you? But then you hit them with a, okay, but how are you really?
Right.
And then they open up and they're able to be vulnerable. And that's what we're trying to inspire people to do is just don't give the basic, oh, I'm good, because that's all people want to hear. It's like, no, how are you?
Yeah.
Well, and to your point about people feeling like, oh, like if I ask somebody how they're doing, is it's I'm worried about them and they're pitiable. I've really like actively over the last couple of years been trying to make an effort to just say, hey, I'm checking in.
Hmm.
Even if it's somebody I haven't talked to in a long time, it's just like, hey, it's been a while. I'm checking in. I want to know how you're doing. I want to know what you're up to. Um, because the thing to remember too is like when I moved to Vancouver and I lived there for 4 years, the first 2 years I couldn't get anyone to keep contact. Like
Hmm.
I was out in this brand new place and I was working a job where I couldn't really make any friends. And I remember just wishing somebody would open a conversation up. And I remember the amount of times I'd message people, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they go, "Yeah, good. How are things?" "Things are good. Things are good. Everything's
Yeah.
fine." Because I
Hmm.
just would want to get a dialogue going. And there were a few people who messaged, out of the blue saying, "Hey man, how are things?" And I got to have those chats. And so
Hmm.
I try to do that more and more often now.
Yeah.
Especially in the advent of like writing no missed calls and going through that. I never want to have the regret that it was a message that I should have sent.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that would be a heavy thing to weigh on somebody like, if somebody, does something to themselves, if they commit suicide or
Yeah.
whatever, like, and to know like, oh, I could have done something different. I had a cousin who ended up overdosing on fentanyl and,
Mhm.
to me, it's like I keep thinking like, oh, I could have done something. I could have reached out more. I could have done this. And in the end, like, it's kind of a personal decision as well, so you can't beat yourself up about
Yeah.
it, but you don't want to live with the regrets that didn't help, when you had that inkling of like, oh, maybe I should contact this person.
Well, and I think it's important, like, you can't undo the past. You can't go back and like the feeling of regret, like if I'd said more, if I'd done more, but you can use it to drive your actions now,
Hmm.
right? You can use it to drive your actions now to make those take those opportunities to reach out now.
Right.
Um, and that's how it has been for me, right? Like it's whatever happened in the past, but I know who I want to be now, and I want to reach out and take care of my friends.
Yeah. It's an interesting, like about the kind of small talk of like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. Like I've heard that that's kind of a cultural thing. It might be a Canadian thing to be like immediately like, oh, I'm doing so good because I've heard, people, we have a lot of immigrants here from like the Philippines and stuff, and like it's not as common in other countries to constantly be like, oh, I'm so good, I'm great. Like if you're like, I think in Eastern Europe and stuff, if you're not doing good, you just say like, oh, I'm not doing good, and it's more upfront. So. Maybe we need a bit more of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think that the small talk can get to the deep talk. I used to not like small talk, talking about the weather and stuff, but sometimes it's that little bit of like social calibration, lubrication, just to get
Yeah.
to the deeper kind of thing. So, whichever way you can end up doing it, I think is good.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, like, especially with mental health, we're all, for the most part, we've been wired to deal with it ourselves. Society tells us, okay, you've got problems. They've got problems too. They don't want to hear your problems. Don't burden other people with what you're doing. But the truth is, more often than not, I've found by being vulnerable, I've had people be vulnerable back.
Hmm.
Like if I am able to express things that I'm going through, they're more comfortable to share their issues with me too.
Hmm.
Um, and that even being the person to be the first one to say I'm not doing good is kind of scary. You never know how they're going to react. I've had friends.
Hmm.
I was at a party having a really big conversation around a fire about mental health, and the host pulled me aside and was like, "Devin, you're kind of bumming everybody out.
Hmm.
It's a little heavy." And I was like, "I don't think that's true." Like we're
Hmm.
having a pretty good conversation out here about it, and I'm learning more about these people. And I went back outside and talked to them, and everyone's like, "No, this was really refreshing. This was a
Yeah.
change from the normal conversations we have at these parties."
Yeah.
But ironically, that same friend who was the one who said, "Hey, you're bumming everybody out," is one of my friends that needs to help the most.
Mm. Yeah. I don't think it's like an either or thing. Like you can have deep conversations that are also
Yeah.
like funny and like lighthearted in their own way. And I think I kind of try and weave the two together, like, talk about deep stuff, but also if you can laugh and, have a good
Yep.
time at the same time. So, because I don't want to, bum somebody out. I don't want to like,
Yeah.
depress people. But at the same time, yeah, I think there's definitely a time and place to be talking about deep issues with people.
It's funny, we actually have to kind of weave that line whenever we do a live show,
Mm.
right? Like if we're going to talk about these heavy issues from like a up on the stage perspective, you can't just hammer somebody with half an hour of doom and gloom, right?
Hmm.
Especially if it's,
Right.
it's a bar atmosphere and the band before you was a party rock band and the band after you is a fast punk band and you're like, "Hey, so we're Lionhearted and we're going to make you sad for half an hour.
Hmm.
Let's go."
Right.
So there really is a delicate balance between weaving levity and humor in with, struggling. Because I mean, I think at the end of the day, laughing and crying, man, it's so much the same thing. It's oftentimes you get to have a choice between the two,
Hmm. They are
right?
very
So
similar, yeah.
try to maintain levity where you can. Like you need to be serious for some things, but at the same time, if you can use levity to lighten it, why not?
Yeah. But I find in your music, like, it's not tonally depressing,
Yeah,
like, and which might be the Midwest emo kind of thing, is it's like kind of upbeat, a little bit fast paced, like the one song, Get It Back Simple.
yeah.
I really like that. It was very like Um, poppy in a way because the choruses were very strong and stuff like that. But it wasn't like you're doing like these dirges that are like depressing minor chord kind of things. So, yeah, I think also it's interesting in music to be doing something upbeat but having kind of a darker undertone or a sadder undertone or whatever to it. So,
Hmm?
Hot Mulligan Winter.
Yeah, Hot Mulligan, Wonder Years, like there's a lot of that same energy where it's catchy and it's upbeat, but if you listen to the content, it's a little heavier. What is it like the
mhm.
pumped up kids effect?
Yeah,
Pumped up
pumped up
kicks?
kicks. Yeah,
Pumped up kicks. It's like
yeah,
if you listen to the lyrics of Pumped Up Kicks, Jesus Christ. Right? But the
yeah.
beat
Very,
is so up and in your face. I
yeah.
think the thing too is like, I've had people ask me like, why don't you write happier songs or why don't you, why does everything have to be sad? But I think a lot of the time the story is about redemption,
Mm,
right? Like going through the crucible and coming out the other side having learned something and having gone through something. And I
hmm.
don't think that's a sad thing. I think that that's, something to be honored and something to be excited about. So a
Right.
lot of the time like the instrumental there is influenced by that concept of okay, we're going to talk about a difficult situation or something heavy, but we're going to walk through the story of how it turns into something else.
Yeah, I think that's like a very common arc, throughout stories, throughout
Yeah.
history, is like they have to obviously go through a conflict, they have to go through some kind of tension before you can get to the happy ending. If
Yep.
it was just a happy story, it'd be like for kindergartners,
Why did I watch it? Why was I
yeah,
here?
no conflict or anything like that. Even in movies like Lord of the Rings, obviously there's, a big struggle to get to the ending, and if there was no conflict, it would just be there'd be nothing to it, I think. So I think most music also has some kind of conflict in it, whether it's like, the tension of like a minor chord or, differences in energy, like, tension and conflict that's part of making art, I think. So,
Well, and that's been the kind of the coolest part about this evolving from like a solo project to a full band is like, being able to implement a bass line that creates tension,
mm,
right? Or even a lead guitar line that like maybe the chords are really static, but the lead line has like a different quality to it to evoke those feelings, right?
hmm.
Because I mean, again, you can tell stories and you can make music by telling stories, but the combination of the two, you have to tell it in different ways. It's a multimedia experience. It can't just be the lyrics. You got to have the music that accompanies those emotions and feelings.
Hmm. Is your like influences, are they pretty much all Midwest emo or is it like kind of broad? Like,
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think
okay.
the original one for me was Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties. Like that's what really got me started doing the solo project stuff, which is it's a Wonder Years side project.
Hmm.
And then yeah, the Wonder Years, Hot Mulligan, Real Friends. But what's kind of cool too is like from a band perspective, everybody's coming from different places. like with what they like and what their interests were. Like I was really big pop punk guy coming into it, right? Grew up on like All Time Low and Mayday Parade.
Hmm.
Kristen,
I was a huge metal fan. Was
Okay.
at all the metal shows, all the, yeah.
Okay.
like our drummer loves girl punk.
Hmm.
Loves girl punk.
Oh
And then our guitar
yeah.
player likes, metalcore. And so these different influences coming from other places coming together to sort of create this sound has been, again, it's interesting to see it all meld.
Right. Well, that's part of being in a band is you just get all these different influences coming from every direction, and it kind of turns it into something that you might not have, if you were just doing it solo, you wouldn't have come up with that yourself. Because I've written an album myself, and I really liked the songs and stuff, but it's a very different thing than like working with other people because they've got all these other influences that are coming into it. So,
Well, and that's really the joy of being in a band, like I still remember the first time playing with four guys and like that moment the wrapping paper or the scissors started to glide through the wrapping paper, like
oh
where everyone
yes.
was doing their job right and it was we're all sounding good and it worked and I was like an anime character. My eyes like tripled in size and my
Yeah.
heart rate tripled and I've been chasing that high ever since and it still happens now, right? Like when we have those moments where a song comes together and it starts to work. Like Get It Back Simple was a chorus and that was it and we had like some chords on a guitar and like a 3 hour session in a basement turned it into what it was.
Hmm.
Um, and again, just seeing all those little bits and bobs and pieces come together, no missed calls, like coming up with the ending and like
Yeah.
all of the different baseline stuff going on there. Um, it's been really interesting. And even as we write now, right? Like a lot of the content that we've worked on up until this point was still from when I was doing this solo,
Mm.
right? So
Okay.
they were acoustic guitar songs that we evolved into a full band piece.
Hmm.
But the stuff we're working on now is coming strictly from a place of we're a full band, we have a full band at our disposal. How are we going to utilize these elements?
Right. Do you still write lyrics? Like, do you write them by yourself and then come in with them, or are you like improvising something while people are playing?
I do a lot of writing lyrics on my own. Like I have the notes app in my phone is inundated with bits of lyrics and finished songs and usually what I'll do is I'll have like a snippet of a chorus or something, like a melody with a single line and then I'll build off of that and then I'll bring it to the rhythm section to see if we can figure out chords and structure to work around it.
Hmm.
But generally, yeah, the songs start with a lyrical idea or like a story that I want to tell, and then evolve from there.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I think that seems to be a very common thing is you have the lyrics yourself. I think because they come from a more personal thing, it's like easier to like sit down by yourself and write them and then bring them in. I haven't really ever had much success just like coming up with lyrics while people are playing. I feel
Hmm.
like most of the time it's like very like stream of consciousness. It's hard to like write a story, tell a story like off the fly, I think. Maybe if you're good at that, you could do it, but
I had our old drummer was very much let's just jam. We'll ad lib stuff, and I was like, I hate this.
right.
I absolutely hate this because for me, like the craft of the story is so important that I don't
Hmm.
want to be just ad libbing and spitting off whatever's on the top of my mind. Like the trick for me is can you make the cohesive story still feel catchy?
Mm.
Like can I tell the story I want to tell but still load it full of hooks,
Mm.
right? As
Yeah.
opposed to just okay, we've got this really cool guitar line. I'm just gonna talk about, going to the beach and having ice cream and my ice cream fell on the ground and oh.
Yeah. So what about Dakota and Lewis? Was there a particular like real life story behind that one, or was it completely
Yeah,
made
so I
up
mean
or
that's probably like the song that really kickstarted Lionhearted for me. So I had moved back home from Vancouver and moved in with my parents and I got a job bartending and I ended up going through a really bad mental health break. Like I had a suicide attempt
hmm.
and my brother was friends with a guy who lived in Mexico, this guy Luis. And I'd met him before and we'd gotten along well. And he was actually going through a similar mental health crisis in Playa del Carmen.
Mm.
And so
Okay.
he reached out to me and said he wanted to try doing all these different retreats and wanted to, try to focus on getting his head right. So he invited me to come live with him.
Mm.
He said, "You come down, you can stay as long as you want, as long as you need." And at the time, I just lost my job and I was in a really, really bad place. And so I wanted to do this. I thought this was going to be a really important thing to getting my head back, but I couldn't afford it. There was no way I was going to be able to come up with the money.
Hmm.
And my brothers now wife, but I think they were just dating at the time. Um, she stepped forward and said, "Let's figure out how much you need. I'm gonna get it to you."
Mm.
She's like, "You need this, and we need you. So like, if
Hmm.
this is what you need to do to get yourself right, then you need to go." And it was like she gave me like $1,000 to get my plane tickets and all my stuff figured out, and for me to just go and do this. And so yeah, I lived in Mexico for 6 weeks.
Wow.
I hand wrote most of a novel down there. I wrote probably four of the songs from Pick Yourself Up, with an acoustic guitar in this little stone house in Playa del Carmen. And
Mm.
um, it was just this really impactful moment where I was like, these two people, I don't know if I'd be here without them. And I need to do
Wow.
something to sort of thank them.
Was this novel The Path of the Raven?
Yeah, yeah, my little
Okay.
fantasy novel. My
Nice.
self-published. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna get anyone to read it, but it's on Amazon.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, like, is there any connection between like the mental health thing and the no, that one's
Nah,
complete like
the
escapism.
Path of the Raven, actually, it was during COVID when I'd moved home, my brother had moved home, and my sisters were at home with my folks. We were all in the house together,
Mm.
and I'd gotten really into D&D. So I was like, I got this idea I'm working on. Let's run a family campaign. And so for like once a week for a good chunk of the quarantine, we played this D&D campaign, and it's evolved. We've been playing it for 5 years.
Oh wow.
But I remember my one sister, who normally wouldn't say anything, was like, "This is really good. You should maybe think about like writing this down."
Mm.
So, I went to brass tacks. I started writing a draft, and then my brother and my dad actually helped me get self-publishing. And so
Mm.
yeah, it's a legit piece of work. You can look it up at Indigo or Chapters, and
Wow. Is there any impetus to like, write more in the series, like continue it
yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah,
I'm working on
okay.
the second book. I think if I'm being honest, like it's been a bit of a roadblock because like you do all this work, you do all the research, you start writing the book, you write the whole book, and it's thousands and thousands of words and pages, and then you find the editor and you get it edited, and then you get it published, and then it's on a store, and now the work's just beginning.
Mm.
How do you get somebody to pick it up, right? You can't take out an
Right.
ad in a newspaper and oh look, another book to buy.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been at a bit of a roadblock there. I mean, I've got half of the second book written already.
Hmm.
But truthfully, I mean, Lionhearted's kind of taken the front seat now with the full band and like the different show opportunities we have. I'm kind of focusing on that.
Yeah, it's hard to have multiple hobbies at once, like putting your time in one
Hmm.
versus the other. Like, with me, I'm in a band and also like with the podcast, so it's like I kind of gotta, kind of even it out a little bit. But
Yep.
I mean, as long as you don't pull like a George R. R. Martin and, wait like 20 years or whatever it is for the next issue.
Yeah, I get the second book out and then die before the third one comes out.
Yeah. Actually, like I would think it'd be really cool if you wrote a book or something and then somebody adapted it into a show or something like that. Like that would be wonderful.
Well, so Kristen's actually in school for animation right now.
Oh, nice. So you could,
So it is something that we are possibly working on in the future, some music videos, some good
Have
stories to
have the
have
Raven
out.
animated, who
Yeah.
knows?
okay. Animation is a pretty tough thing, it seems like. So, I mean, like getting like, a half an hour worth of animation, I think is a pretty monumental task, it seems to me. So,
There are about 24 frames per second of animation, so it's a lot of drawings. It's like 24 drawings per 1 second of animation.
wow. Yeah, animation, it's not, as big as it was, 30 years ago or something, but I wish it was like, I wish Disney would still release, animated films and stuff like that. They have such a soul to them, such a quality to them.
There's been a lot of really interesting resurgences, right? Like there was Vox Machina and Arcane and like a lot more of the sort of like 2D style, like Disenchanted.
Hmm.
Hell, even like Rick and Morty and stuff, where it's more that kind of standard style animation without all the CG.
Yeah, that's true. There's cartoons and things like that. And it would all be computer. Obviously, these days you wouldn't have to do like hand drawn or anything.
Yeah.
You'd probably
Yeah.
just on a tablet. Like that would be very difficult. So,
World's largest flip book.
yeah. Yeah, I mean like getting things adapted into a series, if you have the idea, why
Yeah.
not,
You never know. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of art in general, right? Is like I've got this book, I've got these things that are out there that I can pursue. I've got the music that I can pursue, and like I mean, there's Lionhearted. You could have a side project that focuses on something in particular. I mean, my our guitar player is an audio engineer. He's got his own studio for like bringing people in to record them, like Mad Wolf Studios. I went and got a degree in audio engineering as well. So there's so many facets that you can chase down to kind of just pursue creation.
Yeah, for sure. They're all very connected, anything creative. So I think we should probably start wrapping up here. So,
Yeah.
is there anything from Lionhearted coming out that you want to plug?
The big thing right now is we got two really big shows in the summer. So we're playing this weekend coming up on the 7th, 6th, 7th. I'm gonna open the calendar. Um, on the 7th, we've got a set for Lionhearted in Fort McMurray for Rock the Rails. The show that they put on up there is a free show, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
free to attend. Pretty cool event. We were a part of it last year, so it's cool to be invited back. And then we've got a festival in Cold Lake called Summer Rush, August 22nd to 24th that we're going to be a part of. And then other than that, we're still cooking. We're writing, we're making stuff. I think the plan from here on out is just kind of do some staggered singles
Hmm.
and just keep kind of refining the sound. Yeah, and see where it takes us.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty cool. I think this was a really good chat about mental health. I mean,
Yeah,
like
man.
that's the way that it ended up going. I think you have a lot to say on it, so it
That's
was
Yeah.
really
true.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean we got one album and there's a bunch more in the pipe, so I
We
Yeah.
have a lot to say
got more than
already.
enough to say about
Yeah,
it.
you're not going to run out anytime soon. So,
Yeah, you got it.
all right. Well, it was great talking to you guys, and I wish you a lot of luck in the future.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much.
All right. Okay. Bye bye.